There is a moment in every life when the noise fades and a single truth rises above the chaos. You are living inside the boundaries of your own thinking. Not the limits of the world, not the ceiling of opportunity, the limits of your thinking. Long before money ever shows up in your hands, before success ever wears your name, before recognition ever calls you forward, a quiet decision is made in the mind, and that decision determines everything that follows. You do not drift into wealth. You do not stumble into purpose. You do not accidentally build a great life. You think your way there first. Most people never realize this. They wake up, repeat yesterday, inherit beliefs they never questioned, chase comfort instead of vision, and call it reality. But reality is not fixed. Reality is shaped, and the chisel is your mind. Think of the men and women who bent history. Edison standing alone in his laboratory, surrounded by failure stacked so high it could have buried a weaker man. Thousands of attempts, thousands of reasons to quit. Yet in his mind the light already existed. He wasn't guessing, he was revealing what he had already seen. Or Andrew Carnegie, arriving with nothing but an idea and a burning certainty that steel was not just metal but the backbone of a nation yet to be built. He thought in terms of systems, leverage, and legacy, while others thought in wages and weekends. Or Walt Disney, hearing no so many times it became background noise, yet holding on to a vision so vivid that rejection couldn't touch it. They were not luckier than you. They were not chosen by fate. They chose a way of thinking that refused to bow to circumstance. To think rich is not to fantasize, it is not to wish. It is to condition your mind to expect more from yourself than the world demands from you. Poverty begins as a thought before it ever becomes a bank balance. Wealth begins as a conviction before it ever becomes a result. The world does not reward effort alone. It rewards direction. It rewards clarity. It rewards the person who knows what they are building when everyone else is merely busy. You have been taught to wait, to be realistic, to lower your expectations so disappointment hurts less. But realism, as it's commonly taught, is a quiet form of fear. It is ambition with the volume turned down. The great achievers were never realistic by the standards of their time. They were unreasonable enough to believe their inner vision mattered more than outer opinion. When Napoleon Hill studied the titans of industry, he did not find superhuman intelligence. He found obsession. He found definiteness of purpose. He found men who aligned their thoughts, emotions, and actions toward a single aim and refused to dilute it. They did not think in fragments. They thought in futures. Your life today is evidence of your dominant thoughts yesterday. The income you earn, the relationships you tolerate, the energy you bring into a room, all of it flows from the way you see yourself when no one is watching. If you see yourself as small, the world will agree. If you see yourself as capable, disciplined, and destined to grow, reality will begin to reorganize itself around that belief. Not magically, systematically, thought by thought, choice by choice. To live rich is not about excess, it is about alignment. It is waking up knowing your actions are connected to something larger than comfort. It is moving with intention instead of reaction. It is replacing excuses with standards. Rich living begins when you stop asking what is allowed and start deciding what is required. You must become aware of the stories you repeat to yourself, the quiet ones, the ones that sound like logic but feel like limitation. I'm not ready. I'll start when things slow down. People like me don't do things like that. Those sentences are not facts, they are habits, and habits can be replaced. Every morning, whether you acknowledge it or not, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Your focus, your discipline, your willingness to act without guarantees, these are the currencies of transformation. The mind, once stretched by a greater vision, never returns to its former shape. That is why growth feels uncomfortable. You are outgrowing an identity. Rich thinking demands responsibility. No blaming the past. No waiting for permission. No outsourcing belief to motivation videos or external approval. You decide who you are before the world confirms it. That is the order of power. The moment you accept that your thoughts are not harmless, that they are instructions being followed by your subconscious every second of the day, everything changes. Your habits stop being accidental. Your goals stop being vague. Your time stops being wasted on things that don't move you forward. And slowly, quietly at first, a new standard begins to form. You walk differently. You choose differently. You tolerate less. You invest more in your mind, your skills, your vision. You stop trying to look successful and start building something real. Because thinking rich is not about pretending you are already there. It is about committing to the version of yourself that will not quit before the results arrive. And that commitment is tested not when things are easy, but when nothing seems to be working yet. This is where most people turn back. Not because they lack talent, but because they lack faith in the unseen. They want proof before belief, results before discipline, certainty before action. But the mind that creates wealth moves in the opposite direction. It believes first, acts second, and allows results to catch up later. Every great achievement begins as a private victory. Long before the applause, there is solitude. Long before recognition, there is repetition. Long before wealth, there is self-mastery. You cannot build an empire on a fractured mind. Doubt leaks energy. Indecision scatters power. Clarity concentrates force. This is why definiteness of purpose is not a slogan, it is a weapon. When you know exactly what you want, distractions lose their grip, opinions lose their weight, fear loses its authority. A person with a clear aim becomes dangerous to mediocrity. They stop negotiating with their potential. They stop living half-committed lives. Look at Abraham Lincoln, a man acquainted with failure, loss, and ridicule more than most, defeated in business, defeated in elections, buried children, yet anchored to a purpose larger than his pain. He did not ask life to be gentle. He demanded of himself the courage to continue. History remembers him not because he never fell, but because he refused to stay down. Wealth of any kind, financial, emotional, spiritual, demands resilience. Not the loud kind. The quiet, grinding, day after day kind. The kind that shows up when enthusiasm fades. The kind that works when no one is clapping. Discipline is the bridge between intention and reality, and most people never cross it because they treat discipline like punishment instead of liberation. Discipline is freedom. It frees you from moods. It frees you from excuses. It frees you from the tyranny of comfort. The disciplined mind does not ask, "How do I feel today?" It asks, "What does the vision require?" And then it obeys. To think rich, you must learn to delay gratification without delaying belief. You must be willing to plant seeds in seasons where nothing appears to grow. This is where faith becomes practical. Faith is not blind optimism. It is sustained action in the absence of immediate reward. Henry Ford was ridiculed for believing ordinary people would own automobiles. Bankers laughed, experts scoffed, but Ford saw a future that didn't yet exist and organized his life around bringing it into form. He did not wait for consensus. He trusted his vision enough to outwork the doubt of others. Your environment will test you. People will project their limitations onto your ambitions. They will call you unrealistic, obsessive, extreme. But remember this, every breakthrough looks unreasonable until it works. The world always resists what it does not yet understand. To live rich is to become selective with your energy. You cannot afford to think like everyone else and expect uncommon results. You must guard your mind the way a fortress guards its gates. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every voice deserves influence. You choose what you consume, what you repeat, what you rehearse internally. Gratitude sharpens this process. Not passive gratitude that settles for less, but active gratitude that recognizes progress while still demanding growth. Gratitude keeps you grounded. Vision keeps you moving. Together, they prevent arrogance on one side and discouragement on the other. And then there is adaptability, the quiet strength of the wealthy mind. The plan may change, but the purpose does not. The path may twist, but the destination remains. Those who win are not the ones who never encounter obstacles, but the ones who refuse to let obstacles redefine them. You are not here to survive your days. You are here to shape them, to expand, to build, to leave something better than you found it. Thinking rich is a daily practice. Living rich is a lifelong standard. And every single day, the question returns, not asked by the world, but by your own conscience. Will you think like the person you want to become, or like the person you've been taught to be? The answer to that question is already shaping your future. Most people underestimate how often that question is answered without intention, in the small moments, in the pauses between actions, in the choice to scroll instead of study, to complain instead of create, to delay instead of decide. Destiny is not forged in dramatic declarations alone. It is shaped quietly, relentlessly, by patterns repeated long enough to become identity. A rich mind understands this. It does not wait for motivation. Motivation is fleeting, emotional, unreliable. A rich mind builds rituals, morning rituals that set the tone before the world makes its demands, evening rituals that review the day with honesty instead of denial. A rich mind treats time as sacred currency, not something to be spent recklessly and regretted later. Clarity sharpens when you stop confusing motion with progress. Being busy is easy. Being effective is rare. Many people exhaust themselves climbing ladders only to realize they were leaning against the wrong wall. A definite aim saves you from that fate. It acts like a compass when the terrain gets confusing. It tells you what to say no to. It tells you what deserves your best energy. When you truly know what you are after, you stop explaining yourself. You stop seeking validation. You stop asking for permission. You move differently. Quiet confidence replaces loud insecurity. And that confidence is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the calm certainty that comes from knowing your actions are congruent with your values. Visualization is not imagination for entertainment. It is rehearsal for reality. The subconscious does not distinguish sharply between what is vividly imagined and what is repeatedly experienced. When you see your future clearly, when you feel it emotionally, when you return to it daily with intention, you begin to act in ways that support it without conscious effort. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your tolerance for nonsense evaporates. This is why so many people sabotage themselves right before a breakthrough. The old identity feels threatened. Comfort resists growth. The mind tries to pull you back to familiar ground, even if that ground is unfulfilling. The rich thinker recognizes this resistance not as a warning, but as a signal growth is near. Consider Thomas Edison again, not as a myth, but as a man. Imagine the weight of public failure pressing down on him, the financial strain, the exhaustion, the ridicule. At any moment, quitting would have been logical, reasonable, defensible. But logic does not build the future, persistence does. Edison did not interpret failure as defeat, he interpreted it as data, information that brought him closer to success. That reframing is a hallmark of wealth consciousness. Failure becomes feedback. Setbacks become instruction, pain becomes refinement, nothing is wasted, everything is used. Learning then becomes a lifelong discipline, not learning for credentials, but learning for leverage. The wealthy mind is curious, it studies patterns, it seeks mentors in books when they are unavailable in person, it understands that ignorance is expensive and humility is profitable. Andrew Carnegie surrounded himself with minds sharper than his own. He did not fear being outshined. He understood multiplication. A single mind, no matter how brilliant, is limited. A coordinated group of aligned minds becomes unstoppable. This is the power of association. You begin to think like those you consistently engage with. Their standards become yours. Their expectations raise your own. If you want to live rich, audit your circle, not with judgment, but with honesty. Who challenges you? Who expands your thinking? Who reinforces mediocrity under the guise of loyalty? Growth sometimes requires distance, not because you think you're better, but because you're committed to becoming more. Resilience is built here. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet resolve that says, I will continue. When plans fall apart, when timing is off, when results lag behind effort, resilience is the refusal to internalize temporary conditions as permanent truths. And through it all, gratitude remains the anchor. Gratitude for the lessons. Gratitude for the struggle that forged strength. Gratitude for the vision that keeps pulling you forward. Gratitude does not weaken ambition. It purifies it. It reminds you why you started when the road gets long. Action, then, becomes inevitable. Not rushed, not frantic, but deliberate, focused, consistent. The rich mind understands that massive results are rarely the product of massive action taken once, but of intelligent action taken repeatedly. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You understand that momentum creates clarity, not the other way around. Each step reveals the next. Each action builds confidence. Each day lived intentionally compounds into a life that feels powerful. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to live differently. You respond instead of react. You invest instead of consume. You build instead of wish. You become proof of the philosophy. Because thinking rich is not about money alone. It is about sovereignty over your inner world. And living rich is the natural consequence of a mind that refuses to be small. Sovereignty over the inner world is the rarest form of power, because it cannot be taken, only surrendered, and most people surrender it daily without realizing the cost. They give it away to fear disguised as caution, to doubt dressed up as realism, to opinions that never built anything worth inheriting. A rich mind does not argue with these forces. It simply outgrows them. Outgrowing is a lonely process. There will be seasons when the path ahead feels isolating, when the familiar voices grow quieter, when the old rewards no longer satisfy and the new ones have not yet arrived. This is the corridor of transformation. Many turn back here, mistaking discomfort for danger. But discomfort is often the sound of alignment snapping into place. Purpose becomes your compass in these moments, not a vague sense of wanting more, but a deep, personal reason that pulls you forward even when enthusiasm fades. Purpose answers the question, why endure this? Without needing to explain itself to anyone else. It is the fuel that does not burn out when circumstances change. Napoleon Hill observed that men of great achievement were driven by a burning desire so intense it bordered on obsession. Not obsession with money, but with expression, with contribution, with becoming the person capable of producing the result. Money followed as a byproduct of value delivered at scale. This is a critical distinction. When you chase money alone, it remains elusive. When you chase mastery, money becomes inevitable. The world rewards those who solve problems, who create systems, who bring order where there was chaos, who elevate standards. Wealth flows toward usefulness amplified by belief. You begin to ask better questions. Not how fast can I get rich, but who must I become to handle the life I envision? Not why is this hard, but what is this developing in me? These questions reprogram the mind. They turn obstacles into training grounds. Self-image evolves here. You stop identifying with past mistakes. You stop narrating your life from the viewpoint of failure. You rewrite the story internally, not by denying the past, but by reinterpreting it. Every setback becomes evidence of resilience. Every scar becomes proof of survival and growth. Consider Theodore Roosevelt, plagued by illness as a child, physically weak by every measure. Yet he decided early that his body and mind would not dictate his destiny. He built himself through discipline, courage, and relentless effort. He did not wait to feel strong. He acted strong until strength followed. That is the order of transformation. The mind believes what it sees you do consistently, not what you say once in a moment of inspiration. Action is the language of belief. Each disciplined choice tells the subconscious, this is who we are now. Over time, identity shifts. And when identity shifts, behavior follows effortlessly. Fear never disappears. It is not conquered by force, but by familiarity. The rich mind does not wait for fear to leave before acting. It carries fear along, reduces it to background noise, and moves anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is loyalty to purpose in spite of it. Adaptability deepens here. You stop clinging to old methods. You release attachment to specific outcomes while remaining committed to the mission. You learn when to persist and when to pivot. This balance is subtle and powerful. Stubbornness clings to ego. Persistence serves vision. Failure, then, loses its sting. It becomes temporary misalignment, not personal indictment. You separate who you are from what happened. This psychological separation is freedom. It allows you to stay in the game long enough to win, and winning, when it comes, feels different than imagined. It is quieter, more grounded, less about proving, more about expressing. You realized that the real reward was not the outcome, but the person you had to become to reach it. Living rich means living awake. Aware of your thoughts, intentional with your energy, disciplined in your habits, open to learning, anchored in gratitude, driven by purpose. It means understanding that success is not a destination, but a way of moving through the world. And once you adopt that way, everything you touch begins to change. And as everything you touch begins to change, so does the way you experience time. The days no longer blur together in a haze of obligation and distraction. Each day becomes a container for intention. You stop asking where the time went and start deciding where it goes. This is one of the quiet luxuries of living rich, the ability to be present without anxiety, focused without force, driven without desperation. The wealthy mind understands leverage, not just financial leverage, but mental and emotional leverage. It knows that a single disciplined hour, applied consistently, outweighs weeks of scattered effort. It knows that habits compound silently, whether they are constructive or destructive. And it chooses accordingly. You begin to design your days around your highest priorities instead of reacting to the loudest demands. This requires courage. It means disappointing people who are accustomed to your availability. It means saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. It means trusting your long-term vision over short-term approval. This is where boundaries become an act of self-respect. Not walls built out of fear, but lines drawn with clarity. You protect your mornings because they shape your mindset. You protect your evenings because they program your subconscious. You protect your focus because it is the engine of creation. The rich mind is not chaotic. It is ordered. It understands that clarity creates calm, and calm creates power. When your inner world is organized, the outer world responds with fewer surprises. You are no longer constantly putting out fires. You are building systems that prevent them. History rewards system builders. Carnegie did not swing a hammer. Ford did not assemble every car. Rockefeller did not drill every well. They designed structures that multiplied effort. And before those structures existed in the world, they existed in the mind. Your life too is a system. Your habits are its architecture. Your beliefs are its foundation. Your standards are its ceiling. If you want to live rich, you must be willing to redesign the system instead of complaining about the results it produces. This requires brutal honesty. You must look at your outcomes without excuses, not with shame, but with responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is power. The moment you accept that your results are feedback, not verdicts, you regain control. The rich mind does not dwell on regret. Regret is unproductive nostalgia. It studies the past only long enough to extract lessons, then it releases it. You cannot build the future while staring at the rearview mirror. Momentum requires forward vision, and forward vision demands faith. Not blind faith, but earned faith. Faith built through evidence of your own discipline. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens it. Every small win reinforces the belief that you can be trusted. Self-trust is a form of wealth most people never accumulate. When you trust yourself, decision-making becomes simpler. You stop overthinking. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You act decisively, adjust quickly, and move on. Speed, when paired with learning, becomes a competitive advantage. The mind grows sharper here. You become more observant, more strategic. You see patterns others miss. You recognize opportunities disguised as inconveniences. You understand that timing favors the prepared, not the lucky. Gratitude deepens again at this stage, not as a reaction to success, but as a recognition of alignment. You are grateful because your life reflects your values more clearly, because your effort feels meaningful, because your progress, though imperfect, is undeniable. And yet, humility remains. The rich mind never assumes it has arrived. It stays teachable. It remembers that growth is cyclical, that plateaus precede breakthroughs, that complacency is the enemy of longevity. This humility keeps you grounded when things go well and resilient when they don't. It reminds you that every level requires a new version of you, new skills, new thinking, new discipline. Living rich, then, is not about reaching a final peak. It is about committing to continuous ascent, to becoming the kind of person who thrives under responsibility, who welcomes challenge as refinement, who sees life not as something happening to them, but something unfolding through them. And as this way of being settles in, something remarkable happens. The external markers of success, money, influence, recognition, stop being the goal and start being the echo. An echo of the work done in silence, an echo of the mind that refused to stay small. This is the mindset that changes everything. Because once the echo begins, you realize it was never about the noise. It was about alignment, about the quiet daily decisions no one applauded, about choosing standards over shortcuts when no one was watching, about staying loyal to a vision that only you could see clearly at first. Most people wait for confidence to arrive before they act, but confidence is not a prerequisite. It is a consequence. It is built through evidence, through keeping commitments to yourself, through doing hard things long enough that your nervous system learns, I can handle this. The rich mind understands this and places itself deliberately in situations that demand growth, not recklessly but intentionally. Growth stretches capacity. Capacity expands tolerance, and tolerance creates power. You stop being overwhelmed by complexity. You stop being rattled by pressure. You begin to carry more responsibility without collapsing under it. This is why wealth often bypasses those who seek it desperately and flows toward those who have prepared for it quietly. Pressure reveals structure. When life applies weight, weak systems crack. Strong systems adapt. If chaos follows you everywhere, it is not bad luck, it is feedback. The rich thinker does not resent this feedback. They refine their structure. They simplify. They prioritize. They remove what is unnecessary and strengthen what remains. You begin to respect simplicity, not minimalism for its own sake, but clarity. Clear goals, clear routines, clear values. Complexity drains energy. Simplicity multiplies it. This is why the most effective people are often the least dramatic. They are calm, focused, grounded. Their power is quiet because it is real. The ego resists this stage. It wants recognition now, validation now, results now. But the disciplined mind delays celebration until results are undeniable. It understands that premature pride weakens execution. The work is the work, regardless of who is watching. You learn to detach from outcomes without detaching from effort. This balance is rare and potent. You give your full attention to the process, knowing that obsession with results can sabotage performance. You trust the system you are building because you have tested it through repetition. This is where mastery begins to form, not flashy mastery, but functional excellence. You get better at thinking, better at deciding, better at recovering from setbacks. You waste less time spiraling emotionally. You return to center faster. Emotional regulation becomes a hidden advantage. While others react impulsively, you respond deliberately. While others panic, you assess. While others quit, you recalibrate. The rich mind is not emotionless. It is emotionally intelligent. It feels deeply but acts wisely. This intelligence extends to relationships. You stop seeking people to complete you and start choosing people who complement your mission. You value alignment over chemistry, integrity over charm, shared values over shared habits. Your circle becomes smaller but stronger. Loneliness may visit, but it no longer scares you. Solitude becomes a tool, a place where ideas sharpen and resolve strengthens. You learn to enjoy your own company because your inner dialogue has changed. It is no longer critical and chaotic. It is constructive and focused. Language matters here. The words you use internally shape your emotional climate. The rich mind speaks to itself with authority and encouragement, not indulgence. It does not sugarcoat reality, but it does not sabotage itself either. It says, "This is hard, and I am capable." Capability grows through exposure. You put yourself in rooms that stretch you. You study those ahead of you. You ask better questions. You listen more than you speak. You understand that pride blocks learning, and learning is the currency of advancement. When setbacks arrive, and they will, you no longer dramatize them. You normalize them. You expect resistance when doing meaningful work. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How do I use this?" This shift changes everything. Obstacles stop feeling personal. They become procedural, problems to be solved, not judgments to be internalized. This is freedom, and with freedom comes momentum, not frantic momentum, but steady forward motion, the kind that compounds quietly until one day the gap between who you were and who you've become is undeniable. Living rich means living in that gap consciously, honoring the distance traveled while respecting the distance ahead, staying hungry without being desperate, confident without being complacent. You realize then that wealth is not something you chase. It is something you allow once you become congruent with it. Once your thoughts, habits, values, and actions point in the same direction. This is not magic, it is alignment. And alignment is available to anyone willing to think differently long enough for life to respond. Alignment changes how you carry yourself through the world. You stop rushing. Not because you are slow, but because you are certain. Certainty has a pace. It is calm, it is deliberate. It does not need to prove itself in every conversation or announce itself in every room. It moves with the confidence of someone who knows where they are going, even if no one else sees it yet. This is where patience becomes power. Not passive patience, but active patience. The ability to work steadily without emotional urgency. Urgency clouds judgment. It pushes people into shortcuts that cost more in the long run. The rich mind understands timing. It knows when to press forward and when to hold position. It knows that some doors open only after you become the person capable of walking through them. You begin to notice that life responds differently to you now. Opportunities arrive through conversations, not advertisements. Introductions happen naturally. Ideas surface at the exact moment they are needed. This is not coincidence. It is coherence. When your inner world is ordered, the outer world mirrors that order. Your standards continue to rise, not out of dissatisfaction, but out of respect for your potential. You no longer negotiate with yourself about doing what you said you would do. Discipline becomes identity, and identity simplifies everything. There is a quiet pride that comes with this stage, not arrogance, but self-respect. You know how much effort it took to get here. You know how many nights you chose growth over comfort. How many times you stayed when quitting would have been easier. That knowledge anchors you. Yet you remain humble, because you understand the climb never truly ends. Each level reveals a higher one. Each success demands a broader vision. Complacency whispers, "You've done enough." Purpose responds, "There is more in you." So you keep refining. You audit your routines again. You sharpen your focus. You remove friction. You simplify further. You invest in your mind relentlessly. Because you now understand the truth most people never grasp. The mind is the source of all returns. You no longer chase trends. You build foundations. You think in decades, not days. You ask, what will still matter in 10 years? And you align your actions accordingly. Short-term wins lose their appeal when long-term mastery becomes the goal. The fear of failure fades, replaced by a deeper fear. The fear of underutilization. The fear of leaving potential unexplored. This fear does not paralyze. It activates. It keeps you honest. It keeps you moving. You become more selective with your attention. News, noise, outrage, comparison. All of it loses its grip. You understand that attention is life. What you give attention to grows, and you are no longer willing to grow distractions. Silence becomes valuable. Stillness becomes productive. In those quiet moments, insight rises, solutions surface, creativity flows. You realize that constant stimulation was never inspiration. It was avoidance. And when doubt occasionally returns, as it always does, it no longer terrifies you. You recognize it as a signal to reconnect with your discipline, your vision, your why. You do not argue with doubt. You outwork it. The rich mind does not eliminate negative thoughts. It simply refuses to obey them. Thoughts pass. Standards remain. You see now that thinking rich was never about pretending to be someone else. It was about uncovering who you were before the world told you to shrink. Living rich is not about escaping responsibility. It is about choosing the right responsibilities and carrying them well. Your life begins to feel intentional, meaningful, aligned, not perfect, but powerful, not effortless, but fulfilling. You wake up knowing that what you do today matters, not just for results, but for who you are becoming. And this knowing creates a quiet fire, a steady flame, one that does not burn out because it is fueled by purpose, not praise. This is the mindset that changes everything. Not overnight, not dramatically, but permanently. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you live it, you cannot go back. You think rich because you respect your mind. You live rich because you honor your potential. And from that place, whatever you choose to build will stand. Because when something is built from that place, it carries weight, it carries integrity, it carries a kind of gravity that pulls opportunities, people, and resources toward it without force. You stop chasing outcomes and start attracting alignment. And attraction, when grounded in discipline, is not wishful thinking, it is inevitability. You begin to trust the process not because it is easy, but because it is honest. Honest work compounds. Honest effort leaves evidence. Honest growth cannot be faked, and it cannot be taken from you. It becomes part of who you are, and who you are determines what you keep. This is why so many people rise quickly and fall just as fast. They built results on habits they could not sustain, identities they had not earned. The rich mind builds slowly enough to build permanently. It understands that sustainability is the true measure of success. Your relationship with effort changes here. You no longer see effort as sacrifice. You see it as expression, as alignment in motion. Work becomes meaningful because it is connected to purpose. Even the difficult days carry a sense of rightness. You are tired, but fulfilled, challenged, but steady. You also become more forgiving of yourself, not indulgent, but compassionate. You understand that growth is nonlinear, that setbacks are part of the rhythm. You correct quickly without self-attack. You hold yourself to high standards without cruelty. This balance preserves energy over the long run. Energy management becomes as important as time management. You protect your sleep, your health, your mental clarity. You understand that burning out is not heroic, it is inefficient. A sharp mind and a strong body is a competitive advantage few cultivate consistently. You simplify your life to amplify your impact. Fewer distractions, fewer obligations that do not serve the vision, fewer compromises with mediocrity. Each subtraction makes room for something more meaningful. As your inner noise quiets, intuition sharpens. You begin to sense when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen. This is not mysticism, it is awareness refined by experience. You have trained yourself to notice patterns, signals, timing. And because of that, your decisions improve. Not because you have all the information, but because you trust your judgment. You act decisively, then adjust without drama. You understand that indecision costs more than most mistakes. The rich mind values progress over perfection. It knows that perfection is often fear in disguise. Progress keeps you learning, keeps you moving, keeps you alive to possibility. You also stop romanticizing struggle. You respect it, but you do not cling to it. You understand that hardship was a teacher, not a permanent residence. You allow yourself to enjoy the fruits of your discipline without guilt. Enjoyment becomes deeper now, simpler, more grounded. You appreciate what you've built because you know what it took. Gratitude here is not forced, it is natural. It rises from lived experience, and still, you continue. Not because you are chasing something missing, but because growth has become part of your nature. Expansion feels normal, challenge feels welcome, stagnation feels uncomfortable. You realize then that the greatest wealth you've accumulated is not external, it is internal coherence, a mind at peace with its direction, a life aligned with its values, a sense of self that does not fracture under pressure. From that foundation, money becomes a tool, influence becomes a responsibility, success becomes a platform for contribution, not validation. You begin to ask not just, what can I build, but what can I leave? Legacy enters the conversation quietly, not legacy as fame, but legacy as impact, as systems that outlast you, as people elevated because you existed, as standards raised because you refused to live small. And in that moment, You understand the full meaning of the phrase, think rich, live rich. Thinking rich gave you the courage to believe differently. Living rich gave you the discipline to act accordingly. And everything that followed, every result, every reward, was simply the natural consequence of a mind that chose alignment over excuse, purpose over comfort, and growth over fear. That choice is always available, and it is always yours. And even now, as that understanding settles in, the work does not end. It deepens. Because once you have tasted alignment, anything less feels hollow. You can no longer unknow what you know. You can no longer unsee your own capacity. The mind, once awakened to its power, refuses to go back to sleep. This is where many people misunderstand growth. They think the goal is arrival, comfort, a permanent state of ease. But the rich life was never about arriving. It was about becoming. Becoming stronger in your thinking, sharper in your judgment, cleaner in your execution, more precise in how you use your energy. Ease comes not from avoiding effort, but from mastering it. When effort is aligned with purpose, it no longer feels like resistance. It feels like momentum, like gravity pulling you forward instead of holding you back. You start to respect tension, the tension between who you are and who you are becoming. You no longer try to eliminate it. You harness it. That tension becomes fuel. It keeps you alert, keeps you refining, keeps you honest. Honesty becomes non-negotiable now. You stop lying to yourself about what you want, what you fear, what you avoid. You call things by their real names. Procrastination is no longer waiting for the right time. Discomfort is no longer not feeling ready. You strip away the language that protects weakness and replace it with language that builds strength. This clarity is uncomfortable, but it is freeing. Because once you see the truth, you can work with it, you can train it, you can transform it. The rich mind does not confuse feelings with facts. Feelings are information, not instruction. You listen to them without letting them steer. You understand that moods change, but commitments endure. This understanding alone separates those who build lasting success from those who live in cycles of enthusiasm and regret. You begin to notice something else too. Your example matters. Whether you intend it or not, people watch how you move. How you respond under pressure. How you carry yourself when things don't go your way. Leadership, you realize, is not a title. It is behavior observed over time. And so you raise your standards again, not to impress, but to honor the responsibility of influence. You show up prepared. You keep your word. You do the work even when shortcuts are available. Integrity becomes your signature. This integrity simplifies your life further. You sleep better. You second-guess less. You waste less energy managing contradictions. Your inner and outer worlds begin to match, and that congruence creates peace. Most people chase their entire lives. Peace does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You choose battles wisely. You invest deeply where it matters. You stop scattering yourself thin in 100 directions and commit fully to what deserves your best. Focus sharpens again. Not forced focus, but natural focus. The kind that comes when distractions lose their appeal. You are no longer tempted by every opportunity because you know what you're building. Vision acts like a filter. Anything that doesn't align falls away. And when challenges escalate, as they must at higher levels, you do not interpret them as punishment. You see them as confirmation. Life only tests what it intends to grow. Pressure is not opposition, it is preparation. You meet that pressure with presence, with groundedness, with the quiet confidence of someone who has survived their own doubt and emerged disciplined. You do not need to dominate. You simply need to remain steady. Steadiness becomes your edge. While others swing between extremes, you hold center. While others react emotionally, you respond strategically. While others burn out, you build capacity. Capacity becomes your currency. The ability to think clearly under stress, to act deliberately in uncertainty, to remain consistent when outcomes lag. This capacity attracts opportunity because opportunity seeks containers strong enough to hold it. And so life entrusts you with more responsibility, more complexity, more impact. Not all at once, but gradually as you prove you can carry it. You realize then that success was never withheld from you. It was waiting for you to become congruent with it, waiting for your thinking to mature, waiting for your discipline to stabilize, waiting for your identity to catch up with your ambition. Thinking rich was the beginning. Living rich was the practice. What you are building now is something deeper, a life that can sustain its own success. And once you reach that understanding, there is no going back, only forward, clear, grounded, and awake.